Hey, this is Patrick Curtis, CEO and founder of Wall Street Oasis. Today we have a great chat with Andrew. Andrew joined us right before his sophomore year at Case Western. What was really interesting about Andrew's story is he had a very high risk situation where he had an offer that was exploding. He let it explode, ended up landing at a bulge bracket. But more importantly, listen to specifically how he leveraged us most, and more importantly, how many mock interviews he actually did to improve himself. Enjoy. All right, Andrew, thanks so much for taking the time to join us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So it'd be awesome if you could just give a quick summary bio of your background.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm originally from New York, born and raised. Came out to Case Western here in Cleveland, Ohio. Did all the finance stuff pretty early on in my freshman year. Joined our investment club called the Weatherhead Fund. Did a internship, FP&A, at an industrial technology company my freshman summer. Fall, I guess my sophomore fall, I had the opportunity to work at a private equity firm here in Cleveland.
Mhm.
And that kind of led me to being interested in investment banking and kind of got me into the whole recruitment process.
Nice. So you basically, it sounds like you kind of knew what you wanted to do. Like even in freshman year, you were getting involved in finance clubs. Was IB on the radar then? Like, did you even know what it was, or was it something that you kind of, like you said, once you were at the PE fund, you kind of realized?
Yeah, I quickly realized pretty early on that I wanted to do something in finance. A lot of family and friends back at home were in investment banking and finance in general.
Yeah.
So I kind of knew pretty early on that that was the right track for me. And then also while I was taking the classes and being part of the clubs, I think that further reinforced my interest.
Nice. So like in your freshman year, as you're kind of joining the clubs and doing all this thing and hearing about it, did you start like reaching out to alum right away, like that early, or were you kind of just thinking, hey, I'll wait till recruiting season, sophomore year?
Definitely didn't want to wait. I think yeah, it was pretty early on. We have this thing called the Wall Street Trek, which is a really great program here at Case Western, where we have a lot of speakers come in during so it's the spring, freshman spring is when I did it and when most people do it. And then they have speakers come in and that all culminates in a trip to New York in May. And then we get to go to around 8 different firms. And then that's kind of when my networking really kicked off. And then it was really just starting with the alumni from Case Western and also my high school back at home. Yeah, just ramping it up as it got later in the season.
Nice. So as you're kind of going through the summer, I know you didn't join us till August.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about kind of what you were doing before. Had you had like 10 networking call? I know you did the trek, so you got to meet a lot of people, but had
Yeah.
you done like 20 by that point when you joined us in August, or had you done like, had you done 50
Yeah.
like coming in? So you're
I've
really,
done a couple, no, nothing in investment banking, maybe a couple, maybe 3 or 4 in an actual investment banking, but then also
yeah,
with the Riverside company doing some private equity as well. So it was really great to kind of get a breadth of experiences. The Wall
yeah.
Street Trek also, it wasn't just investment banking, it was also consulting, private equity,
Oh, cool.
and investment banking. So it
Nice.
was a great, exploratory program.
And then talk to me about landing the PE gig.
Yeah.
Like, how did you end up doing that? Was it just through networking? And is that a typical program they have that's like off cycle?
Yeah, it is actually pretty typical. They take a couple of interns from Case Western every fall and the spring as well. There's a great alumni that's been really helpful in with those placements, and it was super helpful to have that experience under my belt to talk about in my interviews because a lot of it was talking about that experience for sure.
For sure. And then when you were there, kind of you trying to balance classes and stuff. This was in the fall of sophomore.
Yeah, yeah.
So you have like you're trying to prep for recruiting, network, plus do an internship, plus do classes, and you joined Academy at that point.
It was
So you
busy.
you have a lot on your plate. Well, let's talk about before we even get into that fall, like
Sure.
why join? Like I think you had already landed that internship when you joined,
Yeah.
right? So talk to me about like why even join Academy when you're going to be so busy leading up to it. What was your thought process uh,
Yeah,
in terms
I
of
think the
joining?
thought process around it was really just having something that kind of motivates me to do the work. And I think that's something that WSO does really well. If you're making a pretty large commitment to the community, and it means that you have to put in that time and effort. And I think that was something that was super helpful, keeping me on track and on a steady pace because it's so organized the program itself. So that was kind of the main reason. And then also, obviously, the mocks are super helpful because you're never going to get any better practice than doing mock interviews.
Yeah, so you kind of come in August and you land, you're about to start classes up again.
Mhm.
Did you, I assume you took a light course load that
Yeah.
fall?
Yeah,
I
I only
hope.
took I only took 12 credits, basically the bare
Nice.
minimum. Because I
Yeah,
was all my classes on Tuesday, Thursday, and then Monday, Wednesday, Friday we were in the office. So
that's awesome.
it was a busy time, but
And were you working like over like upwards of full time, like 20 hours a week? What were you doing?
yeah,
30?
it was close to like 24,
Yeah,
30
a
hours a
lot.
week.
Yeah,
So
that's a lot. Okay, so then
yeah.
you're trying to do, study for exams, probably not
Yeah.
too much time for like other stuff outside of that. So
No.
talk to me a little bit about like yeah, just that fall semester. You're kind of getting ready. You've now at this point, you've done the resume review with us, LinkedIn profile audit. You're kind of getting all the ducks in a row and doing some of the behavioral stuff with us, doing the one-on-ones there. But then talk to me a little bit about like when we launched your networking and like what the difference was in terms of like what you started seeing kind of coming in. I assume coming into more like September, October.
Yeah, yeah, sure. I think that I really stepped it up in the summer, actually, the
Hmm.
summer before all that started, really
Yep.
connecting a lot. I was probably at 100 cold emails by the end of August.
And how many calls?
In terms of, it was probably around 20.
20, not bad. Pretty
And
good
so not
conversion.
bad. It was alumni mostly. I
Yeah.
think, well, alumni pretty much exhausted all of the alumni
Yeah.
by the time I was done with the summer. And they were super helpful and kind of what landed me the first rounds at everywhere that I did land the first round. So,
Yeah.
um,
And so yeah, talk to me a little bit about like how you continue that through the fall. And then I'd love to hear, obviously you highly leveraged the mocks with us and did a ton
yeah,
of mocks, which was awesome to see. I'd love
yeah.
to hear kind of when you started doing that in terms of timing to get ready.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that in terms of when I really started to ramp it up, it was really important for me to get outside the box and really use any relationships that I had. Obviously, being from New York, it was a little bit easier to, and yeah, I had more options available to me in terms of reaching out to people and really making those connections.
Hmm.
And then, yeah, cold emails wasn't the best ratio in terms of the response rate, but I still had a couple
Hmm.
that went pretty well. But yeah, it was really just leveraging any types of relationships that I had from back home, from my school,
Yep.
from my high school, and from Case Western. And then in terms of the mocks, I kind of, I guess, yeah, I was kind of starting with the program because obviously you do the behavior, you do the resume review, the behaviorals, and that type of stuff. And then I guess around November, December, I really started to pick it up because I was also recruiting for my sophomore summer as well. So
Hmm.
doing interviews for that as well.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
was important. Yeah.
It happens fast and furious. So you kind of started that. Did you go to any of the boot camps kind of on the weekends or anything
Yeah.
like that?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
did a lot of boot camps over the summer. It was a little bit trickier
Yeah.
when school started.
Yeah.
So I tried to get all the boot camps in. I think I did around two
Mhm.
of the main ones, trying to get that repetition because the first time through it was a little bit confusing. And then the second time through, things start to click a little
Yep.
bit further, as you're going through the guides as well. It also started to kind of click together. And even with the classes as well that I was taking, I was taking a corporate finance class and you kind of just see everything come together. And it was pretty exciting for me,
That's
actually.
cool. That's cool. Yeah, I'm looking here. I'm seeing on your profile you had like one, two, three, four, five, six, like I think like 12 mocks or something or even more. So
Yeah.
like and the cool part is seeing like the beginning your like the scores kind of were good, actually not bad right out of the
Yeah.
gate, but they clearly got much stronger
Yeah.
within really a month and month and a half. They were really
Yeah.
strong near the end. So talk to me a little bit about that progression. What do you think was the difference? Was it just the reps? Was it kind of because I'm looking in the behaviorals, even the behaviorals got stronger, like your delivery
Yeah.
I think got stronger. It wasn't just technical. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think for behaviorals, it's really about getting the stories down and just getting more comfortable saying them. I think that was
Yeah.
something, obviously you have some stories in mind, but then really making sure that they're kind of crisp and sharp was important to me. And
Hmm.
then in terms of the technicals, yeah, I really started to get more into the technicals in the winter. So like December during that break, I really hammered that home. And I think that's why the technical score definitely jumped a little bit because I don't think I did a single mock in the month of December. And then January really hit the ground running with the mocks because that was when, prime recruiting season really started.
Yeah, and so let's talk about that. Let's talk about first round, like numbers just in general. So obviously you probably applied to like 30 places, I assume,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
30 or 40. And then how many first rounds would you say you got coming?
Yeah, so it was definitely important to cast the wide net, like you
Yeah.
mentioned,
Did
apply
you go
different.
middle market through Elite Boutique and Bulge Bracket, everything?
I
Like,
think, yeah, it was honestly pretty much everywhere.
yeah.
Maybe like missed one or
Smart.
two.
Yeah, smart. Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
but in terms of first rounds, I had throughout the whole process, I want to say I had around seven first rounds.
Nice.
So
And it was
pretty,
just a mix, bulge bracket through Elite Boutique. Did you get a lot of Elite Boutiques too, or more like middle markets and bulge
say
brackets?
it's more middle market.
Hmm.
And then at the end had a couple of bulge brackets, which is where I ended up. So
Yeah, yeah. Cool. And so talk to me a little bit about just, yeah, the how that progressed. So they call it seven first rounds. Was it like two super days, five super days? How was your conversion for, because first round,
yeah,
when you're saying first round, you mean live first round, you don't mean higher view, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
yeah. Yeah, in terms of the super days, I had four super
Great.
days.
That's great.
And yeah, so I got two offers, but it was one of them was early on in early February when I got the offer, and I actually decided to reject that offer.
Wow.
Um, and
Bold.
kind
I
of
think I remember. Wait, you might have DM'd me about that. I think I
yeah,
remember
yeah.
that.
I was really stressful because it was actually interesting that I had two super days in February and then two at the same like they were both at the same time in February and then at the same time in March.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was kind of waiting to hear back from that second one. They kind of that's what the banks do. They like to ghost you a little bit. So I was waiting. And then I realized, that the first place that I got the offer from, it wasn't right for me. It wasn't what I wanted to do. It
Hmm.
wasn't also the location that I wanted to be.
Yeah, it's Midwest. You're trying to get back to New York, right?
I was
Is
trying to get back to New York, and
yeah.
also Chicago. Those are kind of the two main areas and
Yeah.
uh, where I
Yeah.
ended up. So yeah,
Yeah, well, I remember that conversation. Now that you mentioned that, I can remember. I'm looking back at our DMs. I'm like, oh yeah,
yeah,
I remember this now. And I remember
yeah,
being nervous about it because you never want to like really leave an offer on the table if you have
yeah,
it. But I think in this case, the difference between the bulge bracket and like the middle market you were looking at, it was big enough where, if you felt strongly enough about your performances on the
yeah,
so
yeah.
so you
No, I
you took
felt
a high risk approach. So tell me a little bit about that decision and then tell me about like going into those final super days.
yeah, it was really tough making that
Yeah.
decision. It was definitely a decision made with a lot of mentors behind me. I was talking with my parents a lot as well,
Yeah.
uh, kind of making that decision because ultimately, and also, I know it's relatively common these days to actually accept the offer and then renege, but I also didn't want to do that because I
Hmm.
knew that this firm could definitely provide a lot of opportunities for Case Western students in the future, and I didn't want to burn a bridge, so
That's
to
great.
say. So it was definitely a high risk, but high reward. It worked out in the end. I was confident in the connections that I already made, and having those discussions and understanding kind of what they were looking for and kind of putting myself in the um, best possible scenario to get that outcome that I wanted. So
Hmm.
yeah, it
And
was definitely a high
that was
risk.
what later February or early March or in mid March, kind of when you had this super day and was it you said it was two, so it was
Yeah.
I don't know if you care if we say the bank it was Deutsche, right? And then what was the other final?
Yeah, so I had two in the beginning. Now one was with Baird and another one was with BGL, Brown, Gibbons, and Lang, which
Yep.
is based here in Cleveland.
Yep.
And then for the other two, yeah, it was Deutsche Bank and then UBS, and those were definitely later in March.
Yeah,
So
they
around
were.
March
I
20th
know a
when
lot of our students snagged the UBS and were like hyperventilating, like out of nervousness because it was one
yeah,
of the last ones.
yeah, yeah. I think
Yeah.
I was actually in the last group that they did in Super Days.
Yep.
Yeah, no, it was definitely because, coming out of the first round of Super Days, I
Hmm.
didn't have anything else lined up for me
Yeah.
except for the fact that I knew that they were still interviewing, and that was the only thing that I was really hopeful about. And
Yep.
I kind
Yep.
of knew for Deutsche Bank, I had a really good connection, alumni connection. He was kind of mentoring me throughout the process, and he was super helpful in
That's great.
helping me land that internship.
That's great. And then in terms of like just the structure of the interviews, you said first round, then super day. I
Yeah,
assume was the first round more technical? Was it more like behavioral? And then you got like, was the super day the typical? I assume it was virtual,
yeah.
but it was like, was it, two on ones? Was it like all tech, half technical, half, or almost like all behavioral? I'd be curious to hear what that.
It depended on the different firms.
Yeah.
So for I think the most of the first rounds were relatively behavioral,
Hmm.
except for the Deutsche Bank one. That one was very technical. It was purely technical, actually,
Hmm.
for the first round. And then in terms of the super days, yeah, it also varied. I had group interviews, but I also had one-on-ones
Yep.
for DB and for UBS, it was one-on-ones.
Hmm.
It was actually really interesting. So they were both on the same day,
Oh
on a
my
Thursday.
gosh.
It was a
You
very
had to.
busy Thursday.
Wait,
Yeah.
how did you even pull that off? Was it like all morning with like DB
Yeah.
and then all afternoon with UBS?
Yeah. So I got up at like 9 a.m. I did my UBS ones, and then right after that, I did my DB ones, and it was,
Do you feel like you got more tired as the day went on, or it actually
yeah.
helped you warm, or did it help you warm up?
It was tiring for sure. It was a busy day, but it was fun meeting a lot of different people at a lot of different parts of the different firms. So
Yeah.
that was really cool. It was actually really interesting. Throughout all of those interviews, I didn't get a single technical, which was kind of crazy.
No way.
Yeah.
In
But
both super days. In both super
both
days.
super days, not a single technical,
Wow. Okay.
which was pretty interesting. But obviously, the people that were mentoring me and kind of the connections I made were telling me to prep for technicals, but then I got all behaviorals and I was feeling pretty comfortable
Yeah.
and
That's
confident.
awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It makes more sense with the DB because they'd already kind of thrown the technical one at you.
Exactly.
But I'm
Exactly.
surprised the UBS one, if it wasn't a super
Yeah.
technical first round, that they didn't have at least one associate grilling you or something, you know?
Yeah.
Usually it's like an associate or a VP just grilling people on technicals for the technical.
Yeah.
But that's
Yeah.
that's helpful. Um, Looking back, kind of over like the whole process, any advice you would have given yourself, kind of looking back, like if you had been, freshman, either to your freshman self or to like your early sophomore self.
Yeah. Yeah. I think looking back, I definitely could have done more networking. And I feel like it's a corny answer and it's like what you always hear, but yeah, I think networking is the only way that you're actually gonna get an interview. Like there's literally no,
Yeah.
I mean, there is a shot, but like if you don't get, a person on the inside that's kind of, throwing your name in the pile and
Yep.
you know, that then it's going to be really difficult to actually get your foot in the door. And I think that, looking back, even though the cold email percentage ratio of getting a response is so low, just
Yeah.
even the off chance that you do get a response, it could be, just having that one connection can go so far.
Absolutely.
So looking back, definitely could have done more on that front, and I would have advised myself to levy more connections that I had for sure.
That one connection that did kind of work out for you, was it like a family friend, high school alum, case alum? Was it something where like you were able to develop that relationship cold, or was it something like where you knew them for years or something like in that
Yeah,
sense?
so it was a Case Western
Okay.
alum,
Yep.
and he was like an analyst, but he was super involved. I met him over the summer.
Nice.
We continued to, be connected and reaching out, just giving little progress updates. Hey, I started my internship or I ended my internship.
Yeah.
Getting excited. This is what I'm doing to prepare for the
Nice.
interviews, and
So
I'm
you were keeping him kind of in the loop, and he was involved in
exactly
the case like recruiting team or
yeah,
whatever it was. So he was
yeah,
like, "Hey, Andrew's the guy we want because he's a gunner. He's prepping
yeah.
early. He's getting ready." And he knew probably you were. Was there any point you felt like kind of awkward reaching out to him, like to give him those updates, or you felt comfortable enough because he was similar age, like he wasn't like obviously a
No, I
VP?
felt pretty comfortable, especially
Yeah.
because a lot of our interests align. He's on the industrials team, and that was kind of where all my experience was behind
Yeah.
being in the Weatherhead Farm in the industrials vertical, and then also doing a internship at an industrial technology company that he actually knew. So that was pretty cool.
Nice. That's awesome, man. Well, congratulations on your outcome. Obviously, a little bit high risk and scary in the middle there,
Yeah,
but you ended up pulling it off. So congrats. And
yeah,
yeah, hopefully let me know if we can be helpful kind of as you get ready for the internship.
yeah, absolutely. I really appreciate it, and thank you to the WSO community. It was super helpful throughout my whole process, and yeah, looking forward to it.
Awesome, man. Thanks.